Hello, I'm Steve. A little about myself. I'm a retired law enforcement officer with 20 years of service. I began my career in the jail, worked the road, and became an investigator. During my career, my training consisted of everything from SWAT to becoming a state certified crime scene technician. I've investigated crimes from thefts to homicides. After retiring and becoming aware of true crime and web sleuths, I started my channel for web sleuths to better understand the perspectives of law enforcement. Not only do we cover true crime, I go out into the field and assist families who have lost loved ones to homicide and their cases are considered cold. Join me as we look and bring attention to these critical cases. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Glad you're here tonight. And if you're new to the channel, welcome. And as we'll have a presentation, and we have a special guest tonight that Dr. Susan, who has been on, that we occasionally call upon to give some insights into motivations and looking at the mental state and status of certain individuals. While we can't diagnose anyone with what is going on in their life or what certain mental diagnoses they may have that or medications they're on or anything, but we can speculate about certain things, and Dr. Susan and I, we're going to have a conversation tonight about the individual who assassinated the United Healthcare Chief Executive Brian Thompson. And with that in mind, if you have any information regarding this case, absolutely make sure that you contact law enforcement, prosecutors, regardless if it's in Pennsylvania, New York, FBI, whoever, 911, don't care. But if you have information on this case, movements of, and have any knowledge of any type of evidence, make sure the proper authorities are aware of that. For the fact that as the court systems move forward, we absolutely have to ensure that those in charge have all the information so that justice can be found. But with that in mind, and like I said, while you're in chat and we're having this conversation, if you have a question, just throw it in chat and I'll try it. I'll be scanning it and occasionally breaking over there. And if we'll try to answer any of your questions that you have. And but we be mindful and be respectful of mods, families, and each other while we discuss this individual, which I really don't like giving him a name for the fact that in our society, while he may be considered innocent until proven guilty, I still don't want to recognize him as far as anything other than this type of individual for being the coward that you would to go out, take justice into your own hands, consider that you're the judge, jury, and executioner for the benefit of mankind when you don't have the authority or the right to do and commit such acts. So I really don't want to give him any recognition any more than I would anyone that went out there and committed such a heinous crime against anyone. All right, with that being said, let's go and find Dr. Susan down here. Hello, Dr. Susan. How are you tonight?
I'm good. How are you?
I am doing great. Thank you for coming on tonight. And if you would, before we get started, just give a brief introduction of who you are, a little bit about your background, and any disclaimers you wish to do.
Absolutely. I'm a retired clinical psychologist. I was a licensed clinical psychologist practicing for about 20 years with a focus in specialization in PTSD, treating PTSD, psychological testing, including neurological and some forensic testing, and also did training and teaching. I've always been interested in true crime, and especially what made the criminals and the victims tick. And so I can combine that interest with you.
Well,
So
excellent. Now, as far as any type of diagnosis or anything of that, of course, we're not trying to do that, correct? And
no.
yeah, all right.
I cannot diagnose anyone that I have never personally evaluated. I We don't know enough about this person yet to really say anything firm. I've been
Okay.
going through a lot of his readings. I do want to say that, you know, we're going to be talking in general terms, and some things based on his what he wrote, him, or what is believed to be what he wrote.
Some of his writings
Okay,
of
I'm
his
hearing there's an
manifestos, some things.
echo.
As far, yes, because there are some interesting things that he spoke of. Um, Mrs. Steve just said that your volume may be a little high. I don't know if you can adjust your volume as far as your mic on your end or not. It sounds good to me, but I don't know
Did
on what
that?
device you use.
I just dropped the volume down. Did that help?
Yeah, it's fine for me. Thank you. Um,
Okay.
but yes, when you were, what's one of the things prior to knowing that there was a manifesto out there, and just looking and watching the video itself of watching this individual come out of the darkness at this early morning hour, and what did you think of that aspect of this type of crime, of what type of individual at those, and just knowing those facts, what did you think of as far as uh, some things that stood out to you about what type of person might commit such a crime?
Um, I I thought it was. I mean, initially it was like, you know, it looked like a younger guy, so I'm thinking somebody who's got a mission, who's got a grudge, um, and is taking out this person for a defined reason. You know, is literally set up. Also, pretty brazen, and I guess they keep talking about Manhattan has more cameras than anywhere else. He's kind of dropping cookie crumbs through Central Park.
Yeah,
Um,
and then when we find out that he wrote certain or he scribed certain writings on some of the shell casings, that at that point I knew that there was more of a that there was absolutely an agenda and some type of link, or I would assume there was a link, but we find out later not. But um, what was your first thoughts when you saw those messages on the that they reported as far as the scribes on the shell casings?
my first thought was that he had lost someone to um, like healthcare insurance denials or you know, problems with the healthcare system, and either that or he himself was going, uh, essentially they weren't going to pay for a treatment and he was going to die, or something like that, or somebody very close to him, a parent, a child, a spouse.
Okay. Um,
We're
they
trying to
still
work
said,
out the sound.
yeah, there's still a little bit of issue with echo. Can you regulate it any a little bit down or
I,
not?
I can't.
Okay.
Do you want me to leave and come back in on my phone instead? I think that's how I've done it
Whatever you wish
before.
to do, you can.
Okay,
We
let me
just
try
don't.
that.
Yeah, if you got two devices open, that may be the issue.
Oh, okay. Let me see. Did that make any change?
Um, on my end, I don't hear the echo. I have to see what Mrs. Steve says. Say something and see if she hears an echo.
Is it still echoing?
Not to me, but I'm checking with Mrs. Steve. Go ahead and talk about something, and she'll let me know if there's still another echo.
Okay, I
Yeah,
have
there's
to.
still an echo right now. Did you go out and come back in?
No, I'll go out and come back. on the phone. Hold on.
Okay. All righty. All right. Apologize for that, guys, but sometimes this is what happens in the YouTube world whenever, um, like I said, on my device, I don't hear it, but I'm on in my studio, and so um, just don't want to create an echo out there to everyone else. So we'll see. She just take her a second to come back in, and then we'll get it. While she's doing that, I'll go through comments and welcome people. Hello, Gibbo. How you doing? This Jerry, good to see you. CJK, James Tate, good to see you as always. Marion Tates, the Tates are here. Hello, Paula. Timmy's Legacy, which is Barbara Hall, good to see you. Sensei, uh, and like I said, if y'all have any questions, throw them in there. Um, don't worry about Sensei. We all have typos that come in sometimes. Hello, Ben. Hello, Jill. Necessary Evil. Good to see y'all. Uh, James Tate said that the guy made a ghost gun. Wow. Yeah, it was. Like I said, that's a name that was put out there that we covered last week that we talked about. And anyway, here's Dr. Susan again. Let me throw her in here. Say something and let's see if there's still an echo on that.
Are we
Why?
still echoing?
Huh?
Are we still echoing? I'm not hearing myself anymore.
Okay, if you're not hearing yourself anymore, I would imagine that probably fixed it.
I hope.
Yeah, you was hearing yourself a while ago.
I was. I
Okay,
was.
so yeah.
Um the
Okay.
yeah, sort of on a delay.
Okay.
Uh,
All right. Well, we got it about as good as it can get right now. Let me. Hello, Copper Horse. Good to see you as always. All righty. Well, now that we've got the echo, I think taken care of. I'll see if Mrs. Steve tells me it's better, but it should be if you're not hearing it. All right. Let me go back through, see if there's anyone else that's come on. Hello, Sonia. DP. Yes, hopefully, DP, we got that echo taken care of. All right. Yep. Hopefully, she took care of it.
fix the echo, fix the echo, fix the echo.
Yeah, they still hear it a little. Um, I don't know how
Um
to stop that.
I don't either. Let me try one thing.
But hmm, well, well, still an echo.
I'm gonna try
All
to
right. See if
switch
did that help it any?
microphones.
Let's see. Bummer. I don't know why it's doing this.
Yeah.
Uh, let me let me see if I can go to a different speaker. Maybe that is.
Is it still echoing?
I don't know. I'm trying to get that fixed.
Okay. I'm not hearing myself as an echo any longer.
Okay. All right. Let's test this one more time, guys. Is there still an echo?
Oh God.
Okay, they said that's good now.
Oh, okay,
So
good.
I don't know what we did, but we got something.
I went and put my earbuds in.
Oh, okay. So that's probably
So
what it
it's
was. It's through your speaker. If there's a delay, it's probably causing something.
yeah.
Okay. Well, all right. So we got that fixed. Okay. So let's start over here again. Not all the way from the beginning, but um,
I apologize.
oh, it's no. It's stuff that we see all the time. But anyway, hello Debbie. Hello CJK. CJK said that I did read earlier today he didn't have a United Healthcare. Um, from my understanding, that's what law enforcement has released about this individual, that he's not linked to it. Um, is this something that's common? Um, and what you've read or you've looked at from his manifesto and his liking or his admiration for Ted, um, is this um, something that you would expect? And what would lead this individual to link himself to such a person such as Ted?
Um, I went through a lot of his, thankfully several people went through and got all of his Reddit and Twitter posts and things like that. I was able to look at his writings, um, over going back to, I think, like 2016. And it, he seems like he has is very lost at this point in his life. Um, and he's very extremely focused on health issues, and that's going back quite a while, back into his adolescence. He was this was one thing. I couldn't find the post, but he posted on the Visual Snow subreddit along with another bushy eyebrowed perpetrator. Um, so that was interesting. But he was relating a lot of symptoms of that often have a somatic or psychological component to them, um, and not recognizing that there is a psychological component. So he gives a long post about insomnia and the problems that it's causing him, and and he lists off, I'm not having any caffeine, nicotine, drugs, anything that would keep me up. And he says, I have no stress. This is a kid who's in a top prep school, highly competitive, from probably a family that is expecting a high level of success and achievement. He probably expects a high level of success and achievement. Um, it- of course, he's under a significant amount of stress.
Well,
Um,
and that's something that is strange to us that are working class people. That from my background, looking at this individual who comes from a wealthy family, influential, that he lives a lifestyle that of being able to travel the country, travel to Hawaii, live in that environment. Uh, I don't know if he what his uh, types of jobs that he may have held or probably couldn't even hold, for the fact if he does have this chronic back issue that he probably couldn't go into the workforce. But I wouldn't expect that he would have to go down that route regardless. If you look at the background of the family, he probably could have picked and chosen a lot of paths uh, within his family. That's just my personal opinion.
mhm.
What do you think?
Well, I think there's to be careful about the assumption that because someone grew up in a wealthy family, so didn't lack in material needs, that their emotional needs were being taken care of. Um, they could be living in a really unpleasant situation psychologically with strife in the family, abuse. I'm not saying he was abused, but you don't know what goes on behind closed doors. So so while he has those advantages of creature comforts, the best of educations, um no, not worrying about where his next meal is coming from, so taking away those stresses, he does have his own stresses. And you can see he through his writings he's completely pulling away from essentially what would be expected of him and what would be similar with his kind of his family and his you know educational career trajectory. I'm not sure if he actually worked after graduation or not.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, yeah, I know he wouldn't have probably been any type of of the uh, uh, working in any type of physical labor for the fact of his of when his injury did occur. And but what was in his writing of his manifesto
mhm.
relating to his injuries and uh, how do you think that put him on the path to commit such a crime? Or were there any indicators that you read in the manifesto that would indicate that if someone had seen that manifesto at some earlier time in his life, um, are there clues in there of the path that he was choosing?
It, in the to the feds letter, which is the manifesto,
Yes.
I guess, quote unquote. Um, I mean, uh, I wouldn't call it so much a manifesto. He references the spiral notebook, and I think there's a lot of diary entries in there that probably talks much more in depth. But if you if you just read through this, um, getting, I do apologize. It's an I'm sorry, but sorry, not sorry. I do apologize for any strife of or trauma, but it had to be done. Frankly, these parasites simply had it coming. He goes into like their their how much money the company's making. Um, these and probably companies have simply gotten too powerful, and they continue to abuse our country for immense profit because the American public has allowed them to get away with it. So, and then he goes on to say, obviously, the problem is more complex, but I don't have space. And frankly, I do not pretend to be the most qualified person to lay out the full argument, which it sort of presents his real lack of insight into himself. So he's like, I'm going to solve this problem that the American public, no one else but me, is going to stand up and do this, even though I'm really not the qualified to um, explain or fix or do anything about the problems with healthcare in our society. And it, it he's and he finishes with, evidently I am the first to face the problem with such brutal honesty.
Now,
That's pretty grandiose.
okay, yeah. Now,
That's
when we look at his family, of him walking away from his normal orbit of family and friends, and um, and being gone, or just turning his back on those he knows and loves, and stepping away from them, do you think there was any type of outside influence of other people that may have come into his um, uh, life and were feeding him down this path?
I'm not seeing that he was making contact with other people. I'm seeing just a complete withdrawal from others. He went on this backpacking trip through Asia by himself. He was doing a lot of reading and I think trying to figure out who he is and what society should be, looking into a lot of very complex, all over the place issues, and kind of saying, our society, he's a computer engineering AI person, and he's talking about AI and technology destroying our society, how that parents shouldn't allow their children to have access to social media, that it's destroying people, that basically that he- a lot of rejection of essentially what his family stands for, capitalism, um, social comparison, uh, corporations, greed, the have and have nots, which he doesn't really also get that he
Okay.
has a lot
With
of.
that, with
He's
that
all over
thoughts
the
of,
place. He's
yeah,
all over
of
the
him being
place.
all over the place, but that, I mean, at some point he had to decide that he was the answer, that he knew how he could have an impact. And I mean, does him putting himself in this position uh, as the hero in his own eyes, is that the case here? That he thought others would consider him, and that he would be able to reason with society or those in power that this is in their best interest, and therefore he's the hero.
That's what I'm getting from, evidently I'm the first to face it was such brutal honesty, and that he's, at least in this writing, kind of giving a belief that only he has the abilities to, um, solve this problem, even though two sentences earlier, I don't pretend to be the most qualified person to lay out the full
Mhm.
argument for, what's wrong with healthcare in our society and corporate greed um, and things like that. But he can, by gunning down somebody in cold blood,
Mhm.
that's the brutal honesty.
Now, did he put him? Now, did he view the Unabomber Ted in the same manner of that he's putting himself basically? We have that review of what was
Hmm.
that he gave of Ted, of Ted's manifesto, and
Yeah.
in those writings, is he admiring, and is he putting himself on the same level as what the Unabomber was in his mind?
I think he puts in some qualifying statements to kind of protect himself. So, and I'm sure because he had formed this book club with the co-living guys in the surf house in Hawaii, and I don't know, most 20 mid early mid 20s that they're reading Ted Kaczynski's manifesto. I can think of some more fun things to read, but he he makes some statements that Ted was a violent individual, rightfully imprisoned, who maimed innocent people. Um, he says, while those actions tend to be characterized as those of a crazy Luddite, and a Luddite is somebody who's kind of anti-technology. However, they are more accurately those of an extreme political revolutionary. And he then he quotes someone who said he had the balls to recognize that peaceful protest has gotten us absolutely nowhere. And at the end of the day, he's probably right. Um, when all other forms of communication fail, violence is necessary to survive. You may not like the methods. It's not terrorism, it's war and revolution. And I think, yes, he does absolutely admire him and feel that society has reached a point where only war and revolution and sort of starting over
Do you
is the
do you think
solution.
that he could, is he, because he made the thing that at times of violence, he's claiming almost like it's self defense, and that we have to view it as self defense. Is is this something that would put him as towards that he is absolutely insane, or not? I mean, is that steps
Uh,
towards that or not?
I mean, I, I don't know. I don't know. There's a lot of I pick up a lot of fears and anxieties and obsessive qualities to him and his the things that he's written, and he's very hyper focused on health to an extreme degree. Um he was on the irritable bowel syndrome subreddit and had been diagnosed with that, and often that can be caused by physical problems, but it can be extremely exacerbated by stress and anxiety, which he doesn't recognize. And so he goes on what's called a FODMAP diet, even though he's had all of these tests done and they've all come out negative. He's still having this problem that he's probably been told, sounds like you're stressed out and anxious, but I would imagine that's not acceptable to him and likely not acceptable to his family to have any kind of weakness, which isn't a weakness, but the family may view something as talking to a therapist or working on anxiety levels and stress as as being weak or as useless, just so he focuses in in those ways. And I just lost exactly where I was going with that.
Well, I mean,
Sorry.
I know it's a very complex world, the world that you live in, and trying to diagnose and figure out and of course, like I said, we're
And
speculating on a lot of this, but with the condition that he had, and I don't know if it's from
it's a
law
little
enforcement. I mean, I've dealt
confusing.
with a lot of different individuals out there on many different mental levels. Some of it is due to, of course, drug related from the law enforcement standpoint. Some of it's depression for the fact that my mother was handicapped and was in a great deal of pain from rheumatoid arthritis most of her life.
Oh,
And she would speak about being depressed just from the pain, and
absolutely.
I'm sure that you've seen people. And is the depression something that absolutely, you know, I guess there's a lot of motivating factors out there that can drive someone to such a extreme mindset. But um, just give us a few thoughts on what you think as far as his possibly the pain, the depression, the medications of what we should look for if we see something like this in our own families, or we have someone that we have a neighbor or friend that may be going through this, that or might be something that before they get triggered, that we don't want them doing something to someone that but just give us thoughts generally about some of those.
It is extremely common that people with chronic pain are are depressed, and particularly when you're looking at somebody who previously, what, he was ath- athletic. He moved to Hawaii. He's living in the surf house, um, and he's facing or is experiencing. It's a little hard to tell if the surgery fixed this or made it worse. Facing a life of terrible pain, not being able to be, that doesn't go away, not being able to do any of the activities he enjoys, and it could be to the extent that he had said to a roommate, he can't, why doesn't he have a girlfriend? He can't participate in intimacy. So it could lead to that. It could lead to infertility because of mechanics not working, and as well as incontinence. And if you think, that would be a horrible thing to happen to anyone at any age. But I mean, essentially, I think he writes, he's prior to the surgery, that he's terrified at looking at a life of complete disability, and that he's struggled with pain, um, for in his back for many years. And this is something that he apparently had to keep kind of begging for this surgery, and may have been frustrated with healthcare in particular, because this could have been something addressed in late childhood or adolescence before it it got to that point. Again, it's unclear if the surgery fixed it, because he was recommending it to everybody. Um, and but the other problem is, I saw somebody make a comment, oh well, he has this horrible back pain, and here he is sprinting down the street in Manhattan and jumping on a bicycle. Well, adrenaline can do a lot for you. Number one, adrenaline is a great painkiller. Um, and you start to get used to it. But what happens with things like this is somebody would say, why don't you have a girlfriend? And essentially, you have an invisible disability, and in a way that's very isolating. And people don't under people don't understand. oftentimes, and he writes of feeling that people don't understand, they're not hearing him, um, and that's something that's very common. You know, that my patients would who had chronic pain would, my family just doesn't want to hear about it anymore, and they don't get it, and people think I'm just scamming to get a check because I'm walking around and doing things, but they don't know what's going on with me, that makes me unable to work. So it's very isolating. Um, and he, he looks like he just completely withdrew. And when you completely withdraw, he goes from a book club meeting on TED where he's probably getting feedback of like, well, this guy was nuts. He was brilliant, but he was I think I think he was diagnosed with schizophrenia or assumed to have schizophrenia. I know he wouldn't have anything to do with the shrinks at in prison, um, and rejected the insanity defense to his lawyers. So he's getting feedback from the other guys if he says something like, yes, revolution and war, he's got something going there. And the other guys will say, well, that sounds a little extreme. Once he's withdrawn from everyone, he's only hearing himself. He's in an echo chamber. So it's a positive feedback loop where he reads these ideas, thinks that I can do this. What value do I have anymore? The world needs to change, and I'm going to be the guy who can go out and do it. And with no other input from more rational voices, uh, it, this could start to sound extremely logical and correct to him.
I know
Is
I
there
look
been a
at him.
break? Yeah. Has there been a break into, a mental breakdown of sorts? I don't know. I don't know.
Well, I see his reaction of when he's going into that first hearing, and law enforcement's having to force him to the wall, and you see that absolute 180-degree facial change from where uh, one of the images that law enforcement released in New York. You have this smiling kid, great smile, mannerisms, and then you see this contorted face of evil as he makes
Hmm.
this public outcry of everyone should be, you know, uh, uh,
And
aware
insult
of
to
how
the
unjust the world
American.
is treating
Yeah.
them, and he
Yeah.
makes this public outcry that I look at him as basically just a rattlesnake. But I'm doing that from the law enforcement perspective that this
Hmm.
individual has already proven what he's capable of.
Oh,
And
yeah.
now he's continuing on and he's defiant, even in the face of, I'm going to court, but I'm still defiant. And I don't know, uh, do you still think that now that he's taken his shot and has committed this crime, how much of a threat to others is he currently?
I think he's more of a threat to himself than he is to others. Um, he had that there's from sort of snippets that have been released from the Spiral Notebook. It was saying he had thought about using bombs, like Ted did, but that would harm innocents. He didn't want to harm any innocent person, only, the who he's decided is the evil person. Um, so that's why he decided to use a firearm. And I heard I was listening to another psychologist, who's fantastic, uh, talk about that it was notable that the officer wrote that when they asked him if he had been in New York, that he started shaking. Um, that this psychologist thought that his likely idea of what was going to happen, and the reason why there's notes and everything in his backpack, is he's going to go out by cop, um, and make it so that's going to happen, and that the shaking was him knowing he has the firearm on him and deciding if he's going to cause the officer to have to take him down and take him out. And I think he's in a McDonald's, and I maybe viewed the people in the McDonald's as he could hurt somebody in the McDonald's, could get hurt. Somebody, the police officer could get hurt. I don't, I don't know how he was feeling after this, if the reality of what he had done, if he was reveling in the attention, um, or if he was thinking, what have I done?
Yeah, for the fact that he was on the run for quite a while, so he knew. And as we see it, that a lot of times FBI, when law enforcement puts out these lookouts for these individuals or these profiles on individuals, and they talk about people with that they're going to look at how the world is speaking of them, talking about them, and he would have seen how some of the society was looking at him as a hero
Hmm.
for whatever reason. While he's on the run, do you think that was something that was feeding him as far as that had an effect upon his actions and his thoughts?
I think it could have been a very positive boost to him. It's like, yes, see, I was right. I have uh, done the correct thing, and now over overthrow and revolution is going to happen. And uh, when he did start yelling out, this is the injustice of the American public, or he looked back first. He had a normal look on his face, and he turned around and looked to see if the cameras were there, where all the cameras were, and then he started up. So kind of a little bit of performance there.
Well, with
And
that
he
performance, how would you diagnose that, or what's your opinion about why he would? Is he starting to see himself more as a social hero, savior to society now, since he's seeing, and even more so now for the fact that there his people that are
the
following
the
him, subbing to him, are
free Luigi movement, and putting wanted posters of assorted corporate executives all over on, people are pinning them up. Yeah, I think it would, and it would be smart of well, I guess he's kind of in a Richard Allen situation in a Pennsylvania prison now, and to keep him from seeing much about the news, and that people are making a hero out of out of him. And it certainly would feed the grandiosity that you see in his writings. And that's that's not a good thing,
Now,
you
for the
know.
people that are supporting him in this, what what's your initial thoughts of this support that he's getting from our um, this group of individuals? And it's not just a small group. I mean, we're talking about there's
Mm-mm.
thousands of people that are supporting him, and you know that puts me at a loss because this is something I hadn't I've never experienced or seen before. Have you seen cases like this before?
Not I well, I kind of it's they talk about the Robin Hood and the anti-hero in the Western, he's got to come in and clean up the town, and it's usually violent. Um and John Wayne saves the day kind of thing. Um but I found I was looking into that because it is what is going on, and I found a part of a chapter from written by Joanna, oh gosh, Iana Dew, from the book Monstrosity from the Inside Out. And the title of the chapter is The Dark Defender Dexter, that TV show on Netflix or something, and making heroes of serial killers. So it's a Dexter's a TV show where he's like he helps the police, but like at night he goes and takes out other serial killers. Um,
Yeah, Dexter, I think.
yeah, Dexter. So um, she she writes, the protagonist Dexter is sympathetic not despite his monstrous traits, but because of them. By targeting murderers who have escaped lawful punishment, Dexter is transformed from a typical SK into an enforcer of justice. As a result, his need to off people is no longer the irrational urge of a psychopath, but can be seen as a heroic action ridding the world of evil.
Well, I
And
think
I,
that
I
there's
and
on a different
and
social issue that yeah there's a lot of
yeah,
shows out there that makes people look at it as if they could become judge, jury, and executioner and put themselves on such a high level of being the ultimate savior to society. And of course, we can't have that. That's against rule of law. For the fact that while in this case he chose the CEO, but
hmm
what if he had chosen just going into some of the UHC building and he could have picked any employee. He just he went and to the head of the this company to have that impact, but he could have just as easily chosen any of the others. But and
well, from his writings, he really had and the things he was reading, there was a lot of disdain for greed and how corporations control everything, and people have lost the power. And so I think it was very specifically directed um, at this person in particular, since they are making so much money, they're being investigated. He, the CEO, was being investigated for insider trading. Um, so that would, and I think he said something about they're going to a meeting of the bean counters. I, what I thought was actually shocking was the meeting that um, the victim was going to set up. It's really sad. I can't remember his name now. Uh,
Brian Thompson.
Brian Thompson, yes, was going to set up. You know, this has happened. They continued. They had the meeting without delay. I thought that's cold. That's cold. I was a little surprised. You would think the conference or the meet would be canceled, but
Well,
you know,
like,
not supporting him. It was just something I noted, and it was like, wow, ouch.
well, there's always continuity of government, continuity of organizations, powers that, regardless of anything that comes on or happens, and we see it a lot in law enforcement, that it's plan A and not taking up for what the corporate world did, but plan A of our initial plan didn't work, so we go to plan B. And that's all
Hmm.
they enacted as is okay, we lost our guest speaker or our most important, but we still have to have continuity of actions. And
Hmm.
we understand, and I'm only talking about that from my professional standpoint, as far as that when we went in and did certain jobs, that we were in positions that we could be shot. And whereas this individual, it wasn't part of his job description, that he's just the CEO, and it most certainly is not part of his job. But in law enforcement, we view at it that no matter what happens, we continue on with our job.
Hmm.
And I think they just did
Absolutely.
that. And like I said, I'm not trying to defend them, but I look
No,
at it
no.
from a very cold, realistic of, and there's other people out there in law enforcement probably will look at it from that standpoint too. But you
Oh,
know,
I
we're
can see that in a law enforcement setting, though. If there's a, you know, warfare going on and an officer is down, the other officers still have to continue to make the situation safe. They have to continue to do their work. And maybe there's somebody that can help the down officer,
oh no,
but
not even
they,
just a down
yeah.
officer. I mean, it could be any officer that died in the course of work. It could be uh, not just for in an act of violence, but that
Uh-huh.
that
Yeah.
we lost a lot of friends throughout my career. That of course, we went on. It might be our sergeant or lieutenant, someone in admin, something important to our cause. But we couldn't stop our work. We still had to continue along
Hmm.
that path. But
Yeah.
and I'm
I had I mean, in a similar type of experience of, you know, it doesn't matter how hard the last session was. You've got the next patient waiting. And I had a situation um where it's late into my career, where I came in on a Monday morning and I've got a voicemail from the daughter of a patient saying that the patient had self-harmed himself and was dead. And that's, you know, that just knocked me. It just gut punched me, because, you know, you want to blame yourself. You want to, what did I do wrong? What did I miss? You know, and I went down to tell my boss, and there's paperwork and all kinds of things that have to be done, and let him know what was going on. And, uh, I'm kind of a basket case at this
Mhm.
point. And he gets a call in from the clerk who's looking for me because I was like 15, 20 minutes late for my patient, my first scheduled patient. And I was never late. So he was looking for me. And my boss is like, your patient's here. You need to go see him. And I was like, I, all I could think was like, I can barely, I can barely think straight, you know. And he goes, go on, soldier on.
Yeah.
And
Um,
I went and did it.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, I'm going to
Uh,
thank Aquarium One to gifted 5 True Crime Web memberships. Thank you for your support. That means a lot to us. And then another one of our questions, or that I think is very important, if this encounter at McDonald's hadn't occurred, what do you think? Do you think he would have continued on, and there could have been more victims? What's your just speculating? What do you think his next moves were?
I was thinking about that earlier, and I, um, it's really, I wasn't quite sure. I don't know that this went exactly to plan. I think he assumed there would be a standoff and he would be taken out of at relatively quickly. I don't know that he knew what to do. I think from that spiral notebook there may be a, more people on the list that he planned to continue going after. But I'm not sure. I'm not sure because he did have that note written about that specific individual. Well, these parasites, but it is naming the specific company.
Yeah, yeah. It's
Yeah, I
like I
don't
said,
know.
this is a very odd case, and um, you know, the attorney that he currently has, of course, is there. I was watching some videos of him. He's a very outspoken, outgoing guy, and I think that he's fighting it from every point that he can. And as this case moves forward, um, it's going to be an extremely interesting case, and there's going to be a lot to talk about on this case. And I'm absolutely thank you
Hmm.
for being here tonight. Um,
You're
as
very
we
welcome. Thank you for having me.
as we wind down, is there some specific point that we missed, or that you think is key that should be noted?
Um, I don't know. I think there's going to be a lot that we may learn about him. Um, oh, I guess one other thing that he was very focused on was the role of men in society and how he feels that men are made for impossible situations and daring feats. They're born with a hero's heart, and they're being told that they're worthless and useless, and the things about them are bad. The masculine traits are are negative traits when they aren't. So that is another thing. Like I said, he's sort of all over the place
Yeah,
in
that makes me. I mean, yeah, I mean that's
what
confusion of of what
He's
is his, of anything. He's male.
Yeah, and it didn't seem to reflect anything about like his confusion over his gender identity, but more um the how current society is diminishing the role of males and putting males down, and normal male behavior is now seen in a negative way. Um, so no, very much identifying as a male, and saying that men are essentially being emasculated by society. And
Well, is there anything that you
he may be
see of all the
experiencing
things
that
that you've read or
personally with
looked at? Is there anything that says that there's a triggering or what triggered him to do this? Do you see anything?
uh the post whatever happened post surgery and he went off radar. He was saying initially that the surgery was successful, and then I think he just cut off friends, family, and disappeared from social media. Wasn't returning any contacts within about a month have of of having the surgery. So that makes me wonder if either it made things worse, it caused all new sorts of new problems, it didn't fix the old problems, or I think he was very, very lost. And that seems to be the tipping point.
Okay, that's interesting because, like I said, there's a lot of things that can go on in one's mind or behind closed doors or a relationship that his anticipation of what he was hoping for the surgery, and how successful it was, and maybe but there's still so much that we don't know about those of why he broke those relationships. Um, was it just a
Hmm.
mental break? Because, and of course, my
And that's
understanding of
possible.
mental breaks is far different than your understanding of mental breaks, because I've seen people just snap, um,
Hmm.
and it happens. And I'm sure there's a term for that, but you know,
Well,
in law
and I
enforcement, we have to deal with it.
yeah, it seems like he's been dealing with, there's been a lot of underlying mental health stuff going on with him since adolescence, and with a lot of anxiety and a high level of stress, and probably a lot of pressure put on him to be the be the best. And he may be somebody who puts that pressure on himself. He may have perfectionistic tendencies and things. We don't know what his family life was like. He certainly disappeared from them to the extent that they filed a missing persons report for him in San Francisco. I don't know if he had been there. Um, but given his age, um, it, it's there's also he's looking into like impact of alcohol and drugs on psychosis. So is he experiencing that? We don't know. But if this operation went horribly wrong, that certainly is a level of, I mean, I can absolutely see him being profoundly depressed, extremely angry, and feeling that essentially his life is over.
Well,
Um,
well, if this goes to court, we'll have a better understanding because all of that will be, you know, part of what the defense has to bring to the table to show,
yeah,
and
yeah.
which right
The
now, like I said, we know
for
so little about him.
jury nullification is what I keep hearing.
Yeah,
Get all
yeah.
the
Well,
get it.
like I said, this is a strange, and it will be a strange case because we're
Yeah.
so early into it. Now, did I anticipate that they would ever capture the individual? Um, of because we often see, whereas they do self harm by LE, that
Hmm.
in those last moments, that's their whole game plan of how
Yeah.
to get out of it. Well,
Yeah.
they may not have the courage themselves to do it, but they have no problem letting law enforcement do it.
Yeah. Well, and he's a part of another of like these ideological, this isn't a grudge against an ex-girlfriend or a former employer or something like that. It's based on ideology. And Eric Rudolph, the guy that was hiding in the woods for 4 years after he'd blown up the Olympics and
Yes.
killed some people, and Ted Kaczynski, his was definitely ideological. Um, and, that's what this all is this kind of philosophy. And again, sort of it's just another removal of looking at himself, his inability to like look at who he is inside and instead put it outward. It's a disease, it's a illness, it's not my inability to manage my stress, kind of.
All right.
So
Well, you got any
yeah, I don't know.
closing words or advice for or what you see is coming up in the future for this case?
um I'm surprised the feds haven't picked him up
As
for
in what way?
terrorism.
Oh, okay. Well,
And to
there's always that possibility. It depends what happens in the court systems within the state. We
Yeah,
saw that occasionally. You'll see that where the feds will come in later, and that's still an option.
yeah, yeah. So I think they can come in whenever they want.
Yeah.
Well, one thing that I did want to say, and I did forget to say this at the beginning, is if you or family, to people listening or now or on replay, if you or your family is really distancing themselves, acting out of the ordinary, giving things away, um, especially during this season, and then as spring comes, check in on them. If you're very concerned and you don't know what to do, anyone in the US can call 988 on on a mobile phone, or they can text it, and text chat. Or if you're using a regular phone, it's 1-800-277-TALK. And that is the National Crisis Hotline. And they will put you in touch with resources that can help you. It's licensed professionals you're going to be talking to. And you don't have to be at the point where, you've got the weapon loaded.
Yeah, I just had a
Go better to be safe than sorry. Better to check in than not check in.
yeah. I just had a nutcase in our chat. He was a clone evidently. I had to get rid of him. Uh,
Uh
he was flat earther. He was special.
Uh-oh.
He's working out of
Uh-oh.
his mother's basement or something. But
Gonna
anyway, he's
fall off
got
the
plenty of
edge of the
time
earth.
to mess with others tonight. But it's amazing some of the people that visit us and chat sometimes. But anyway, I appreciate you coming tonight, and
Thank you. Thank you for
there's
having
going to
me.
be a lot more to look at on this individual, especially because the defense will have to bring up certain um, lines of defense, and I'm looking forward to get your opinion on those as we move forward. But anyway, guys, I want to thank everybody for being here, and I especially want to thank Dr. Susan, who I respect greatly and is a very valuable part of our team with the foundation, and has done so much for our foundation. I wish to thank her, and but look forward to working with her in the future. But y'all stay safe out there, and we will see you soon. I'll see you backstage, Dr. Susan. Okay,
Thank you
bye,
very much.
everybody.
Bye, everyone.